The National Assembly of Kenya, that is Parliament, will be resuming its sittings tomorrow after a very long recess following the protests by the youthful Gen Zs who gained entry into the Parliament grounds in a historical happening in this country on the 25th day of June 2024. Welcome to the Bold Analysis. My name is Frank. The National Assembly is expected to resume its sittings tomorrow after I think a month or so of days or weeks being away from their duties, following the protests that were partly blamed on Parliament to have fueled, especially after they passed the famous or the draconian Finance Bill 2024. We have a lot to say as Parliament resumes its sittings tomorrow, and a lot is expected of them, especially at a time when they are supposed to be discussing and deliberating on various issues. Key among them is the approval or the vetting of the cabinet secretaries that are still being appointed or that were appointed by William Ruto. We can all remember that what led them there, even though the leadership of the House is saying that, it was just a normal recess, but we all remember that what led them there was that much dreaded protests that even questioned the legitimacy of Parliament. This is even after many people have been calling for the dissolution of the Parliament. But in as much as that has been happening and that was not in the offing, some people have also turned their guns and instead asked the Parliament to impeach the president and so that this country can return to normalcy. But then those are just happenings on the extreme that we cannot witness as of now. We can all remember that before this Parliament went for a recess, or when they went for a recess, that's when we also witnessed the Salimia Wabunge initiative, where a majority of the members of Parliament property and homes were touched by arsonists or by the raged Gen Zs in regards and in response to the way that they debated and passed the unpopular Finance Bill 2024. So there are a lot of questions that have risen and that are continuing to rise over the credibility of the August House and as to whether it can be trusted to chart forward Kenya's future or even tomorrow's legislative agenda, as it is one also of the very important arms of government, a government that is finding itself on the receiving end after a majority of Kenyans have expressed their dissatisfaction in the manner and way in which the government has been working, especially on issues to do with the high cost of living, corruption, unemployment, and the tribalism that is being witnessed in this country. So when Parliament will resume tomorrow, key among the businesses will be the revision of the budget estimates after the rejection of Finance Bill 2024. The new budget estimates have some key elements of budget cuts that have been witnessed across many state departments and government agencies following the dismissal of the Finance Bill. So there are serious budget cuts for various departments who have expressed also dissatisfaction with the budget cuts, and they're saying that some of their services are going to be crippled. But Kenyans have been saying, it seems like you're lying to us, because even on the budget that you're given on the extreme, or that was sufficient or near sufficiency for your operations, it was clear that they couldn't manage their budgets very well, and what was in the offing was the case of mis-expenditure. I've just seen somewhere that it is reported that during Madaraka Day celebrations, the county government of Bungoma alone, under the governorship of Governor Ken Lusaka, used about 25 million just for flower beautification program of the city. 25 million just for buying flowers, you know, etc. So that is the kind of wastage that Kenyans have been seeing that informed the decision by the Gen Zs to come out in their numbers and demand for accountability. Various state departments have been affected. I remember seeing somewhere also that, for example, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had a new department that was in the offing, the Department of Foreign Academy something, that has been forced now to operate without staff and probably might be closed or so because of the serious budget cuts that have been presented to them. I also saw somewhere where the Department of Defense was saying that it will be difficult to protect the Kenyan airspace because of budget cuts and that they were supposed to buy airspace defense system, etc. But Kenyans have said that, you know, when these budgets are there, there is no sufficient use for them, but instead they are marred by instances of corruption from the people who are mandated to look at these departments. We also expect Parliament during their resumption of their sessions to address key pertinent issues like still budget cuts on various important crucial sectors of the economy, such as education and the health sector. Of course, the education sector has been affected, especially the CBC thing that was rolled by the previous government and has been a continuation by this government, where the junior secondary school teachers have been on rampant strikes. The pupils are supposed to transition to grade 9 and yet they don't know their fate as to whether they'll be able to be learning in their lower primary schools or they transition to a different school elsewhere. And more so critically important, of central importance, is the issue of teachers who will teach them. I've even seen Trans Nzoia Governor George Natembeya wade into this.
Ningependa serikali sikie, iko mchezo. Kama mjapata hii habari, yuko mashinani, hakuna masomo. It's a total joke. Haiwezi kuwa ati masomo subject ni 14 na walimu wawili ama mwalimu mmoja. Unajua hawa watoto ni wachanga, wakienda kwa shule na wakae tu, hiyo ndio raha yao. Lakini tunaharibu maisha ya watoto wetu. Wale watu ambao walifikiria mambo ya CPC, hiyo mambo ya nini hiyo kitu hii ni mbaya hii. Implementation is terrible. Watoto watakana kuwa na lab, wapi lab? Watoto hawa wanagadi wako secondary lakini wako ndani ya primary. Sasa watoto hata wanachanganyikiwa, hii secondary, junior, primary inakaa aje? Tafadhali, nataka watu wasikie. Kama kuna njama ya kuhakikisha kwamba watoto wetu wanakaa kwa ujinga, huyo mtu mwenye alipanga hiyo njama ni shetani kabisa. Hatuwezi kuchezea masomo namna hii. Watu walimu wa JSS wale wachache tena wamekuwa kwa mgomo na hakuna mtu ambaye anashtuka. Watoto wamekaa nyumbani almost 3 months bila masomo. Sasa mtu atameweka structure ya elimu kwamba ati hakuna mtihani, ati wakifanya ile mtihani kidogo ni assessment, na watoto wote wanapita. Anaambiwa ati below average, at average, at above average, ati mmaliza namna hiyo. Sasa hata kumaliza hiyo ukienda ng'ambo, kama unapata nafasi, scholarship utapata namna gani? Hii dunia hii is about competition. Kila kitu is about competition. Mbona kwa siasa wasiingize mambo ya average na above average? Ukipigiwa kura, ukishindwa, ukishinda, mwenye ameshinda, mwenye ameshindwa, mwenye ameshinda, atinyi wote mmepita. Mbona wasifanye kwa siasa namna hiyo ili sisi wote tukue marais, ndio? Ukiparticipate kama nyinyi wote ni wanane, mnaambia nyinyi wote mmepita.
It is also expected that the Parliament, as I had mentioned, will resume the issue of vetting of the various CS nominees that was done by William Ruto following their dismissal and later reappointment of some. So Kenyans expect that Parliament will be able to address the issue of the recycling. You know, some of the people that have been reappointed back are being accused of pertinent issues that bewildered their ministries, yet the president in his wisdom, or I don't want to say lack of the same, saw it wise to reappoint some of them, something that Kenyans have said that was like an abuse to them, and their call for accountability and total dismissal of the cabinet.
Tunarudi wapi? Tunasema Kenya is for Kenyans. Kenya is not for few individuals. There is no way tutakuwa dictated na few rich people. Hii Kenya imejaa na watu ambao ni maskini. Haiwezi kuwa 50 million ni poor and then 10,000 people ndo matajiri alafu wanatu control. Tunasema hivi, Tuesday tunarudi maandamano. Na tunataka kusema anybody who is against Gen Z, huyo ni mtu ambaye ni katili.
Even though Ruto did dismiss some of them, but in the Gazette notice that he issued, he didn't give reason for the dismissal of some of these members of the cabinet. Of course, Kenyans expect Parliament to do, some of them are expecting that Parliament will be able to stand on its independence and do the lynch mob justice to Kenyans, where they'll reject the appointments of some of these cabinet secretaries that have been appointed to the government, whom they say are a disservice to the nation or a dishonesty on part of the president, and so thereby they expect Parliament to be the only credible thing that can save Kenyans. But then that one, we know the Parliament of Kenya and the way they responded to the issue of the Finance Bill 2024, that might not be in the offing. Also, if it is true that this Parliament wants to save its credibility and legitimacy and regain its public trust and confidence, then we expect them that they should question these CS appointees or nominees on why they think that Kenyans lost confidence in them and called for their dismissal, yet the president still found it good to nominate these cabinet secretaries. So it's something that we are waiting to see, even though we know that it's a parliament. Somebody labeled it as a parliament of alls, where nobody cares what happens. They only care what happens to them and not what happens to the people who elected them to represent them. And while this happens, we've said that Parliament needs to re-establish its mandate so that it can regain the public confidence and trust that seems to be have been eroded. Questions also still linger on the legitimacy of the August House, and in real sense, it would not be wrong to say that it is true that we can blame the Parliament for having gotten us to where we are today, because all these issues, all these cases of the protests that we are seeing in the country, that even the president is saying that enough is enough, it is true that it's the same very Parliament that got us to where we are today, because Kenyans came out and told them that we don't want to pass the finance bill because it's unpopular, it's going to hurt us. But they still went ahead and passed the same. So they got to tread, they got to tread carefully as they resume their sittings. And you know, of course, there has been an issue that has been talked on the nature of the parliamentary leadership that we've been having in this country. They're also to blame on the same, because you see the major decision-making slots in parliament, Kenya Kwanza gave them to very young politicians who are politically excited and do not know what the masses feeling is like. You saw the way the likes of Kuria Kimani, the likes of Silvano Sosoro used to respond to people on issues, finance bill, and issues that were pertinent to this country. They were saying that they are going to pass it regardless, and you saw where it got them. The Parliament House, the August House, was almost being touched down, and they were forced to run away, something that was even a security risk to some members of Parliament who maybe thought that it was wise to listen to the people. So Kenyans generally are looking forward to serious leadership reorganization, and if at all the president will be forced, or the opposition will be forced to listen to the president and have that broad-based government talks as they purport to be, then maybe some of the demands that we can't be surprised to see is in terms of the reorganization of the House, in terms of the various leadership positions that some of these members of parliament hold. And as I've mentioned it before, it is time now for the parliament, if they want to rescue their image out there, to work on their independence. There have been cases and instances of, you saw some member of parliament coming out and saying that they were giving 2 million each in order to vote for the finance bill. So that independence of the legislature as an arm of the government needs to be re-established, so that we can have a parliament that can have the public trust and public confidence, and not a parliament that can be used to just pass repressive laws and ideas that are against the people of the republic. It is also a time that we expect parliament to be somehow creative in the way that they are going to conduct their businesses, because if at all the idea of the broad-based government is going to be in place, then we are going to have an instance where we have a dwindling opposition, a house without opposition, and that one will be very risky. How will the public view them? How will they regain that public confidence when they don't have an opposition from within? And it is just a majority, a say of the majority. Once the majority have it, then there is no critical dissection on what the minority are saying. You remember very well, before that parliament went on to a recess, before the actual dawn of the finance bill, there were some amendments that were proposed to that bill, and some of the good amendments were from the members of the opposition. And then on the last day, when I think they were going to take the third sitting vote, the opposition withdrew some of the motions or amendments that they'd presented forward. So it's something that we're waiting to see, while at the same time there is a discussion about the merger and dissolution of some state parastatals and agencies that the president said about 47 of them. So this is solely a mandate of parliament. So how are they going to even react on to the fact that these state parastatals were by law established by an act of parliament, and therefore their dissolution has to be by an act of parliament, despite the talks that the president said that he's going to dissolve them personally. So those are instances that we are going to see a very good acid test on the suitability of the parliament and the August House. Thank you for watching. That marks the end of our analysis.